Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast, episode 11. In this episode, I'd like to share an audio preview of the first book of the Trilogy Rivers, Canyons, and Drones, the Librarians, an allegory of the Old Testament.
About the librarians. Mankind has become increasingly bound by the chains of spiritual impotency and material greed. A book containing the power to break those chains reveals itself over a span of several generations to four young people, each chosen to be its librarian. The book leads each of the librarians on their own journey to spread its 7 pillars of knowledge. Giants must be vanquished, unknown spiritual beings defeated in combat, powerful magicians exposed, and cities built in desolate deserts. The burden of carrying the book weighs heavily on its librarians, forcing them to face the greatest enemy of all, themselves. They struggle with doubts, fears, and feelings of unworthiness, which constantly arise in their hearts, seeking to deceive them into thinking that the battle is too difficult and that they must quit the journey. Prologue. The mighty river flowing along the ridge overlooking the valley was the beating heart of the town below. After giving of itself all year to the town and its surrounding forest, it was renewed by the heavy rains of late winter and early spring. The townspeople far below could hear the incessant pounding of the torrential rushing of the revitalized river. If ever it was to burst from its restraints and cascade down the walls of the ridge, it would within a matter of minutes become an unstoppable tsunami, destroying all life for miles around. Yet the townspeople never feared such an event, even after the heaviest of rainfalls, because they trusted the river and knew it would never betray them. The daily message of the river through the centuries was always the same: I will provide food and protection for you. I will wash away any enemies who may try to attack you. I will provide guidance for you. Study my path, and you will gain insight for yours. And in those moments of its greatest strength, when it had once again successfully called down the rejuvenating waters from the skies above, the river would roar, I will create the finest soil, which will create the finest plants to feed the finest cattle, with which I will provide you. I am the creator of life. The group of assassins and vicious dogs surrounding the young girl walked through the forest to the execution site. Although it was still early in the day, a darkness began to fall on the forest. The sky was blue and the sun was shining brightly, everywhere except where the strange group walked. The darkness, with its bone-penetrating chill, traveled beside and over them. The men began flapping their arms against their chests and blowing their warm breath on their hands, trying to keep warm. Mia stared straight ahead, oblivious to the cold. Obad raised his hands, indicating for the group to stop, and asked Maya to walk about 15 feet in front of the others. As she did so, she walked into the light, while the darkness and its iciness remained hovering over her captors. Obad asked her to stop. I just wanted to show my men that you are not the cause of the darkness. It is accompanying us because of the foul deed that we must complete. Keep walking in front and remind us what is of the light and what is of the darkness. She stopped for a moment and turned around to face her captors. If you think what you are doing is so evil, why do it? I gave my word to defend the city. You have made treasonous statements against it which weaken morale. You must die the death of a traitor. Maya said nothing and turned to continue walking. Obad said, Wait a moment. He looked at his men. If any of you feel that you no longer want to continue with this duty, you are free to leave. Just do not return to the city. We will report that you were killed in action, so there will be no repercussions against your family. Wait in the village, and I will send your family to meet you there. He waited. 2 men turned and ran away through the forest. One of those remaining walked up to Obad and said, Everything you say will be reported to Zebul. I suggest you run away like those other cowards, because if you don't, I am sure Zebul will exact a most gruesome punishment on you. The other said, pointing to Maya in disgust, Comparing this thing with your daughter or any of the young girls in the city is blasphemous. The only reason we don't kill you now is that you're the one placed in charge by Zebul. Only he can remove you. So let's get this over with. Obad nodded at Maya and she began again walking in the warm sunlight while the others followed shivering in the cold darkness that walked increasingly closer to them. Stopping at the edge of the well, Obad removed his backpack, opened it, and pulled out a long, thick rope. We could just shove you in and you would probably break or sprain something with your fall, but we will spare you that. Put this rope around your waist and we will lower you into the well. That is the last kind act anyone will ever do for you. When you reach the bottom, untie the rope and we will pull it up. You will not be given food or water, and the wild beasts of the forests may try to kill you, as well as any rats or snakes already waiting for you at the bottom of this forsaken well of death. It is my hope that your death be quick, not long and tortuous. Mia put the rope around her waist and slowly walked to the edge of the well. The sunlight left her, and she was covered by the same cold darkness as the others. The men tied the other end of the rope to a nearby sturdy tree, and Mia began the slow descent to the bottom of the well. As she was descending, her eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness. When her feet hit solid ground, she untied the rope from her waist and gave it a quick jerk. She watched as her only means of escape from the cold, dark crypt gradually was pulled away from her. The ropes climbing up the wall reminded her of a snake's crawling. Was the assassin mocking or warning when he mentioned snakes waiting for her? Even though her eyes had adjusted to the darkness, she was unable to see in the darkest corners of her tomb. She listened for the uncoiling and slithering of venomous predators. Mia's many battles against depression and hopelessness had honed her mental strength. She had learned to recognize the uninvited presence of thoughts whose only purpose was self-destruction, and to rebuke those thoughts before they took root in her mind. The snakes, the oppressive darkness, the certainty of imminent death were real, but the Creator had taught her of a higher reality beyond the dark, dank chamber that imprisoned her body. She rebuked the oncoming fear as it inched further into her psyche, trying to extend its tentacles until they found an unfortified section of her mind where they could penetrate and plant their roots. She thought of the Creator. He had told her that this moment would come. It was not a punishment but a fulfillment. She was not facing death. She was awaiting her transition. "Help me be strong," she whispered. Mia could hear a thunderous shaking of the ground above. Initially it seemed distant, but with astonishing speed the thundering was directly over her, a brain-numbing pounding of thousands of horses' hooves crashing against the floor of the forest. She could hear a cacophony of sound in the distance, the yelling of men, a vast army of men. She heard the voice of the assassins calling out in terror to one another. "They've come! The invaders have come! Mia, can you save me?" It was the voice of Obad, the leader of the squad of assassins. "That is not my decision. Will you ask the Creator to save me? He knows your heart. I don't. You should go now."
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear from our listeners. Please don't miss any update, subscribe, and share. Join us in the next episode of Lilies and Ravens podcast. God bless.